How a strong man saved me from my stalker, an abuser's downfall. 3 years ago, I was invisible, a walking shadow, terrified to even smile at a stranger. My ex, Derek, took everything. My freedom, my friends, my keys. He made sure I knew he was watching. Always. But then my laptop broke, and I walked into a random repair shop where I met a man named Cameron. He was huge, a professional fighter whose hands could end a match in seconds. And he saw the fear in my eyes. I thought he'd be just as controlling as Derek. I was wrong. The moment Derek realized Cameron wasn't intimidated, that's when things got truly terrifying. And the line between an honest mistake and a full-blown physical threat disappeared. I'm going to tell you how that strong man changed everything and how a group of women finally brought my abuser down. But I want to know, what is the single bravest thing you've ever done to stand up for yourself? Drop a comment below before we dive in. My possessive ex-fiancé threatened every single man who even glanced my way, until I started dating an amateur powerlifter who stood at 6'6". I am Alara, and I am 29 years old. 5 years ago, I finally managed to break away from Rhys after 3 years in the most suffocating relationship of my life. But separating from him did not mean he let me live in peace. The harassment began the morning after I vacated our shared flat. I was at the local grocer's just trying to purchase some essentials for my new studio in Cypress Bay when a gentleman near my age offered a polite nod in the imported cheeses aisle. Just a civil acknowledgement, nothing concerning. I nodded back because that is simply how one interacts in society. 4 hours later, Rhys appeared at my new place. I still have no idea how he obtained my new flat number. He hammered on the door so violently, I genuinely feared the wood would split. "I saw you at the grocer's," he bellowed through the door. "I saw that fellow looking at you. You think you can just move on? You think I'm going to permit some stranger to believe he can have a moment of your attention?" I contacted the local constables. They arrived. They spoke to him. He was instantly placid, all politeness and contrition. He claimed it was a slight misunderstanding. He said we'd only recently separated and emotions were running high. The officers simply advised us both to put the past behind us. That was the first instance. The second was at a local bakery. A baker's apprentice engaged in light chat with me while preparing my sourdough loaf. Rhys was somehow there, seated in a shadowy booth. I hadn't even noticed him. The apprentice, a kind-faced youth who could not have been older than 20, finished his shift only to discover all 4 of his bicycle tires punctured in the alley. I was certain it was Rhys. The young man didn't connect the dots, but I did. The third time occurred at my local community center. A man inquired if I was done using a bench press. He simply inquired. Rhys shadowed him to his vehicle and was seen getting confrontational, warning him to keep his distance or face serious consequences. The man returned inside and reported the incident to the staff. They reviewed the security surveillance. Rhys was permanently barred from the premises, but the pattern did not cease. For 3 years, this dictated my existence. I couldn't speak to men. I couldn't exchange pleasantries with anyone. I couldn't exist in public without the paralyzing fear that Rhys was observing. I petitioned for a protective order, but Rhys was cunning. He never acted against me directly. It was always the men in my vicinity who were targeted. And in every instance, he had an ironclad alibi, or a plausible justification, or just enough legal deniability that no charges ever stuck. My acquaintances suggested I relocate to a different city. My father wanted me to come back to our family home in Alberta, Canada, but I'd established a career in Cypress Bay. I had a steady occupation as a structural draftsman. I had my own flat. I had my daily routine. Why should I be the one forced to flee? So I remained, and I became deliberately inconspicuous. I ceased socializing. I stopped seeing anyone. I rarely left my flat except for work. I was 29 years old and living like a recluse. Then I encountered Kellan. It was a Friday morning, and my CAD workstation crashed right in the middle of a critical project. It just completely died. I panicked and rushed to the electronics repair shop 3 blocks from my firm, on the verge of tears. Kellan was stationed behind the counter. He was enormous. I am 5'5", and I had to severely tilt my head to see his face. He was easily at least 6'6", possibly taller. He had a massive frame, and his hands were like small shovels. His jaw was square, and his forehead showed a faint silvery scar. He looked formidable, but when he spoke, his voice was surprisingly low and soothing. "Steady. It's okay. We will diagnose the issue. Let me examine it." I frantically explained the deadline to the project, the stress, everything pouring out of me. He listened calmly, then gave a reassuring smile. "I can have this functioning within 2 hours. There is a juice bar nearby. Go get a healthy drink, try to breathe, and return. I'll take care of it." I wanted desperately to caution him not to be kind to me. I wanted to tell him that showing me simple courtesy would place him in jeopardy. But the deadline was in 3 hours, and I was desperate, so I just managed, "Thank you." 2 hours later, my workstation was functional. Kellan refused to bill me for the service labor. "New customer introductory rate," he said with a wry smile. "Just pay for the replacement processor." I should have simply left it there. I should have collected my computer and never returned. But something about his presence felt impenetrable. Perhaps it was because he was so physically imposing that I couldn't conceive of Rhys actually threatening him. Perhaps I was just utterly exhausted from living in fear. "Thank you," I said. "Truly, you saved my professional life today." "Anytime." He offered me a simple card. "We are open 7 days a week. Anything technology-related fails, you know the address." I exited the shop and made it only a short distance before I realized Rhys was across the boulevard, leaning against a lamppost, watching me. Our gazes locked. He offered a cold, chilling grin, not a friendly smile, but a stark warning. My breath hitched. I walked faster, returned to my firm, and spent the remainder of the day feeling nauseous. That evening, I drove past the repair shop on my way home. The lights were still on. I could see Kellan through the glass, focused on a circuit board at the counter. I parked far down the street and just sat there, watching, waiting for Rhys to peer and commit some atrocity. But nothing happened. Kellan secured the shop at 7:30, walked to a large black utility van, and drove away. I went home and could not sleep. The next morning, I couldn't concentrate on my blueprints. I repeatedly checked the repair shop's social media feed, expecting to see a report about vandalism or worse, but there was nothing. At lunchtime, I walked past the shop. Kellan was there, safe and sound, assisting a customer. He noticed me through the window and gave a small wave. I waved back and continued walking, my pulse racing. 4 days passed. Nothing happened. Rhys didn't appear at my flat. Kellan's shop was not damaged. No flat tires, no threatening altercations. It made absolutely no sense. On Sunday, I went to the local produce market in the city center. I used to go every weekend before Rhys, but I'd stopped because he always managed to track me down. This was the first time I'd gone in over 2 years. I was examining some fresh peppers when I heard a resonant voice behind me. "Ilara." I pivoted. Kellan was standing there in a simple gray t-shirt and cargo trousers, carrying a canvas shopping sack. His arms were enormous. They weren't simply muscular, but strongman huge, all dense, powerful muscle and obvious strength. "Hello," I said, trying to sound unremarkable. "I wasn't aware you frequented this market." He smiled. "The vendor just over there sells these sourdough loaves that are truly superb. Have you tried them?" I shook my head. "Come on, my treat. Consider it a discount for slightly undercharging you on that computer component." "You didn't undercharge me." "I know, but I'm buying you a loaf regardless." Something about his conviction in his voice made it impossible to object. We proceeded to the vendor together, and Kellan purchased 2 loaves and 2 large bottles of chilled mineral water. We located a quiet bench to sit and eat, and we talked. we truly connected. He told me about his childhood in rural Vermont, about moving to Cypress Bay 6 years ago, about how he'd always had a knack for electronics but needed a physical outlet, which is why he trained constantly. Trained for what? Powerlifting and strongman. I compete locally. Well, semi-professionally. I've been in 10 major meets. I've placed in the top 3 in all of them. My stomach tensed. You're a lifter? Yes. He broke off a piece of bread. I know. People hear that and assume I'm some aggressive brute. But honestly, it's the opposite. Moving immense weight teaches you precise control, absolute focus. When you are that physically capable, you become incredibly deliberate about not misusing it. I was speechless. A part of me wanted to stand up and bolt. A part of me wanted to confess everything about Rhys. A part of me just wanted to sit there and relish a completely normal conversation for the first time in years. We talked for over 2 hours. He was clever and insightful and surprisingly calm for someone who lifted small cars for a hobby. When we eventually prepared to leave, he asked if I would share my number. I hesitated. Every alarm in my brain screamed that this was dangerous. But I was so deeply weary of being terrified. I gave him my number. That night, he sent a text message. Thank you for the market outing. That was restorative. Would you consider getting supper sometime? I stared at my phone for 15 minutes before finally responding.
I must tell you something first. Understood. So I told him the complete truth about Rhys, about the threats, about the cycle of men around me being scared away or harmed, and about how I hadn't dated anyone in 3 years because I didn't want anyone else to suffer on my behalf. I expected him to cease communication. I expected him to invent an excuse and vanish, like any logical person would. Instead, he wrote back, "That is horrifying. I am so sorry you have endured that. But here's my perspective, Alara. I am not intimidated by your ex-fiancé, and I would genuinely like to take you out for supper." We went to supper on Thursday, a pleasant Spanish tapas restaurant in the city center. I was on edge the entire time, nervously checking the dining room for Rhys's face, but he was absent. Kellan told me about his upcoming regional strongman meet. It was in 2 weeks, here in Cypress Bay. He seemed eager, but also focused. My main rival is a formidable competitor. He is a phenomenal log presser, and that has always been my weaker event. I asked, "What is your strongest event?" He replied, "The deadlift. I'm a lifter first, but in strongman, you have to master many different lifts. You must be truly versatile." After supper, he walked me to my car. "I had a wonderful time," he said. "May we do this again?" "Yes," I said, and I meant it completely. We started seeing each other often. 2 dates a week became 3, then 4. He never rushed for anything intimate beyond holding my hand or a simple kiss goodnight. He was patient and gentle and made me feel secure for the first time in years. And Rhys didn't appear. Not a single time. It was bizarre, disconcerting. I kept waiting for the inevitable confrontation, but it never came. 3 weeks into dating Kellan, I attended his strongman competition. He'd given me 2 tickets, so I brought my friend Sabine. She'd been my closest confidant since university, and had witnessed Rhys systematically dismantle my life in real time. "I cannot believe you are dating someone," Sabine whispered as we found our seats, "and I truly cannot believe you're dating a strongman competitor." "He is not what you would assume," I said confidently. "Look at you. You are smiling. You are out in public. You are truly living again." The competition was intense. I'd never watched strongman before, and the sheer force of the feats shocked me. But Kellan was outstanding, powerful, and focused. He won the final event, a massive deadlift, and secured first place overall. After the meet, we went back to his tent to congratulate him. His face was red and glistening with sweat, and his hands were calloused, but he was beaming. "You came," he said when he saw me. Of course I came. He kissed me right there in front of everyone. It was the most definitive kiss we'd shared, and it felt like everything had aligned. We went out to celebrate with his training partners and some friends. At the pub, Kellan introduced me to everyone. "This is Alara, my lady." My lady? The phrase made my heart leap. I hadn't been anyone's lady since Rhys. That evening, after everyone else had departed, Kellan and I sat in his utility van in the parking structure. "I need to tell you something." My stomach twisted. Here it is, I thought. This is where he admits it's too complicated, that Rhys is too much. But instead, he said, "Your ex-fiancé came to see me." I asked, "About 3 weeks ago when everything suddenly stopped?" "What?" "He arrived at the shop, waited until I was alone, and came inside. Started making veiled threats, told me to keep away from you, said he'd make my life miserable if I didn't comply." I felt like I couldn't draw a breath. "Kellan, I am so sorry. I should have been clearer in my warning. I should have—" "Alara." He gently took my hand. "Let me finish the story. So, your ex is standing there, attempting to intimidate me, recounting all the things he's done to other men who spoke to you, and I simply listened, let him exhaust his anger. Then, do you know what I did?" I shook my head, unable to speak. I informed him that I compete in strongman for a living, that I've been training intensely for 15 years, that I've lifted with the strongest men in the country, and am capable of moving a truck, and that if he ever came near you, if he ever so much as sent you an email or drove past your apartment, I would track him down, and it wouldn't be a hollow threat. It would be a simple, undeniable promise. My hands were trembling. What did he do next? He tried to appear formidable for about 10 more seconds. Then he realized I was completely serious, and he quickly departed. Haven't heard a peep from him since. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You threatened him." I didn't threaten him. I merely ensured he fully grasped the reality of consequences. There's a vital difference. Kellan looked at me with a serious expression. "Alara, I know what you've gone through, and I know you've likely been shielding everyone around you for years, but you do not have to protect me. I am capable of defending myself, and more importantly, I absolutely want to protect you." That was 5 months ago. Rhys hasn't contacted me since. He hasn't shown up anywhere I frequent. He hasn't harmed anyone around me for the first time in over 3 years. I am finally free. Kellan and I are still together. I attend all his competitions now. He's won his last 4. We moved in together last month into a small duplex with a front porch. The duplex was Kellan's suggestion. He'd been residing in a cramped apartment above the repair shop, and I'd been in my one bedroom with too many painful memories. We agreed to start afresh together. House hunting was an experience. Every place we viewed, I caught myself meticulously checking for security features. Sturdy locks, well-maintained streets, easily accessible exits. Kellan noticed my anxiety. "We are going to find a home where you feel completely safe. Take all the time you need." We found it 4 weeks later. It was a cozy 2-bedroom in a quiet residential area. The owner was a lovely elderly gentleman named Mr. Alistair, who lived 3 houses down. He took one look at Kellan and remarked, "Well, good. You're a substantial fellow. We could use more reliable people on this street." Kellan chuckled. "I'll certainly do my part, sir." We moved in on a Saturday. Sabine came to assist, along with Kellan's 2 strongest training partners, Brendan and Scott. Both of them were lifters too, though not as tall as Kellan. They treated me like I was already part of their extended family. "Kellan never stops talking about you," Brendan commented, while carrying my bookshelves. "It's genuinely tiresome. Alara this, Alara that. We understand, mate. You're completely smitten." Kellan tossed a balled-up piece of tape at him. That first night in the new duplex, we ordered Thai food and sat on the floor because we hadn't bought any furniture yet. Kellan wrapped his powerful arm around me and said, "This is ours, our sanctuary, our life together. No one else is permitted to breach this." I wholeheartedly believed him. The next few months were the most peaceful of my life. I was discovering what a normal, healthy relationship felt like.
Kellan and I had our first actual disagreement about 4 months in. It was trivial, something about him forgetting to notify me he'd be late from the gymnasium. I grew severely anxious because he wasn't answering his phone, and when he finally got home, I overreacted. He didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "You are right. I absolutely should have called. I sincerely apologize." That was the end of it. No screaming, no retribution, no protracted silence. Just an honest apology and a promise to be more mindful. I began to weep. I just stood there in our kitchen and wept because I had genuinely forgotten that disagreements could be so straightforward. Kellan held me while I tearfully explained how Rhys used to escalate every minor disagreement into a psychological war, how he'd inflict the silent treatment for days, refuse to tell me what I'd done wrong, and force me to beg for forgiveness for transgressions I didn't even understand. I will never, ever do that to you. We are going to have arguments occasionally. That is perfectly normal, but we're going to argue respectfully and we're always going to reconnect. Always. I am learning to inhabit the world again, to step out without the crippling fear, to smile at passersby, to simply exist in the world as a regular individual. But it wasn't all seamless. About 6 months into our relationship, I suffered a severe panic attack at a restaurant. We were out for dinner with some of Kellan's friends from the gym, and one of them brought his new girlfriend. Her name was Chloe, and she seemed pleasant enough, but she was the same height as me, with my long auburn hair. And when she started sharing a story about her own ex-boyfriend, something about the way she described him made my chest clench. The restaurant was packed and deafening. Too many people, too many unknown men, and suddenly I felt completely suffocated. I excused myself to the restroom and locked myself inside a stall, desperately trying to remember the measured breathing exercises my old counselor had taught me. But I couldn't regain control. My heart was hammering. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. I was utterly convinced Rhys was outside watching, waiting to strike. Sabine found me 10 minutes later. She'd realized I'd been absent too long and came searching. She sat on the cold tile floor with me while I completely broke down. "It's all right," she kept repeating. "You're secure. Rhys is not here. Kellan is waiting outside. You are safe." Eventually, Kellan came looking for both of us. He took one look at my face and understood instantly. He didn't ask any questions. He just helped me up, quietly informed his friends we needed to leave, and drove me home. In bed that night, I apologized profusely. I ruined the entire dinner. "You didn't ruin anything," he said. "You experienced a panic attack. That is a trauma response, not your fault." I truly believed I was improving. You are improving, but recovery is rarely a straight line. Some days will be exceptionally difficult, and that is perfectly acceptable. He convinced me to start seeing a professional counselor again. Her name was Dr. Anya Sharma, and she specialized in complex trauma and emotional recovery. Dr. Sharma was exceptional. She didn't force me to painfully recount everything, but she helped me constructively process it. She helped me understand that what Rhys did was completely his own malice, that I didn't deserve it, that I didn't provoke it. You cannot regulate other people's despicable actions, she told me during one session. You can only control your own response, and you responded by surviving. That requires incredible resilience. Therapy was profoundly beneficial. Slowly, gradually, I started feeling much more like my true self, the self I was before Rhys, the woman who laughed easily and trusted people and didn't instinctively recoil when someone raised their voice. Last week, I was at the city bookstore by myself when I saw Rhys in the science fiction section. My whole body instantly froze. He saw me too, For a brief second, we just stared at one another. Then he abruptly pushed his cart and walked in the opposite direction without uttering a single word. I stood there for a full minute, processing what just happened. Then I let out a laugh. I actually laughed out loud right in the middle of the bookstore because Rhys was afraid, not of me, but of the formidable person who had chosen to stand permanently beside me. That night, I recounted the story to Kellan. "He ran away from you," Kellan said, a proud grin on his face. "Excellent." "I feel like I should perhaps feel guilt about that," I admitted. "Like, you essentially scared him into abandoning me through pure physical intimidation. Isn't that just more of the same dynamic?" Kellan thoughtfully considered my words. "The fundamental difference is that I'm not controlling you. I'm not dictating who you can speak to or where you can choose to go. I'm not making your world smaller and smaller. I simply made certain he could not do that anymore. That is not the same thing at all." He was absolutely correct. A few days after that, something truly unexpected occurred. I received a message on a professional networking site from a woman named Nia. I didn't recognize her name, but her profile indicated she lived in Cypress Bay. The message read, "I hope this is not too strange, but I learned through a casual acquaintance that you previously dated Rhys Sterling. I am reaching out because I just began seeing him and some of his behaviors are beginning to feel very wrong. I was wondering if we might talk privately." My blood turned to ice. Rhys had moved on quickly, and he was already starting the precise same pattern with an innocent new person. I telephoned Kellan immediately and read him the entire message. "What should I do?" "You arrange a meeting with her," he said without a flicker of doubt. "You must tell her everything honestly. You give her the necessary warning you never had." So I did. Nia and I met at a casual coffee house the following afternoon. She was 25, attractive, and visibly shaking with anxiety. I did not soften the facts. I told her about the 3 years of controlling behavior and psychological manipulation, about how Rhys systematically isolated me from my support system, about how he meticulously tracked my every location, about how he monitored my private text messages, about the terrifying threats after I left, and about the 3 years of living hell where I couldn't even have a normal exchange with a man without Rhys ensuring they suffered for it. Nia's complexion grew paler and paler as I spoke. "He insisted you were unhinged," she whispered, "that you fabricated terrible lies about him, that you were unfaithful to him and then tried to deliberately ruin his life when he ended the relationship." That's his playbook. He always rewrites history, casting himself as the wounded party. "He has already insisted on checking my phone," she said quietly. "He claims it's because he has serious trust issues from his previous relationship with you. I genuinely thought I was helping him heal." "You are not helping him. You are merely enabling him, and I promise you it's going to escalate dramatically." Nia departed the coffee house visibly distraught. I had no idea if she'd heed my counsel or not. Some people, unfortunately, have to learn the painful way. But 3 days later, she texted me. "I ended the relationship. He completely lost control, started shouting, and damaged some furniture, but I am out. Thank you, Alara." I showed Kellan the message. "You saved her too. You successfully broke the cycle." "We broke the cycle," I corrected him. But the confrontation with Nia was not quite over. 4 days after she ended things with Rhys, she called me in a complete frenzy. "He's directly outside my apartment building," she said, her voice severely shaking. "He's been out there for an hour, just sitting silently in his car, staring up at my window. I called the local authorities, but they said unless he commits a crime, there's nothing they can lawfully do." "What is your exact address?" She quickly gave me the address. It was only 20 minutes' drive. I didn't even hesitate. I just grabbed my car keys and rushed for the front door. Kellan calmly stopped me. "Where are you going in such a rush?" "To Nia's apartment. Rhys is there. She is terrified." "Then I am coming along." We drove to Nia's apartment complex together. True to her word, Rhys's small coupe was parked across the street. I could clearly see him in the driver's seat, fixedly staring up at one of the windows. Kellan expertly parked his massive van directly behind Rhys's car, boxing him in. Then he got out of his van and walked up to Rhys's window. I watched nervously from our van as Kellan rapped sharply at Rhys's window. Rhys slowly rolled it down. I couldn't clearly hear what they were exchanging, but I could clearly see Rhys's face. He looked infuriated at first, then deeply intimidated. Then he abruptly started the car and sped away. Kellan returned to the van. He's gone now. What did you say to him? I calmly reiterated our last conversation, and I firmly told him that if he ever harassed you, me, or any other woman in your sphere again, I would personally ensure everyone in Cypress Bay knew exactly what kind of abusive person he is, starting with his financial employer. His employer? I conducted some light research after he came to the shop.
Rhys is a junior analyst at a major firm downtown. They have a very strict professional code of conduct policy. I sincerely doubt they'd be thrilled to discover one of their employees is stalking multiple women in the city. I stared at him in awe. You researched him thoroughly? Of course I did. Know your adversary. That is basic strongman strategy. We went up to Nia's apartment. She was still severely shaken, but she was overwhelmingly relieved and grateful. We stayed with her for an hour, just to ensure Rhys didn't dare attempt to return. Before we departed, I gave her Dr. Sharma's contact information. Counseling is immensely helpful, I assured her. Trust me on this. That weekend, we returned to the produce market again, the exact same spot where we'd shared our first genuine conversation. We were eating fresh-baked loaves under the same big maple tree when Kellan said, I'm competing for the National Amateur Strongman Title next month. It's the biggest competition of my career to date. I'll be there, front row, I said immediately. I know you will be. He gently took my hand. But that's not all I wanted to discuss. Ilara, before I met you, lifting was absolutely everything to me. It defined my entire identity, my entire existence. But now, I don't know, it's still critically important, but it's not the only thing anymore. You are everything to me. My heart was thumping hard. Kellan, I am not proposing yet, he said quickly, letting out a laugh. Not right this second, anyway. I just urgently wanted you to know that meeting you utterly changed my life's trajectory. You made me vividly remember that there is more to this life than simply lifting heavy objects. That being genuinely strong isn't just about how much you can lift. It's about who you defend, who you stand up for fearlessly, who you ultimately choose to be with. I kissed him passionately right there under the maple tree in the middle of the crowded produce market. People likely stared openly. I didn't care at all. The championship competition was 4 weeks later. Kellan's main rival was the man from Toronto with the daunting log press record. 18 wins, just 2 losses. Both of Kellan's trainers were noticeably anxious, but Kellan was serene. I am completely ready, he told me the night before the competition. I've trained more meticulously for this event than anything else in my life, but even if I lose, I have already won the most important thing, because I have you. The competition was fierce. 5 events. Kellan took some crushing losses in the early events. His face was beet red and strained by the 3rd event, but he never gave up or wavered. He kept pushing, kept fighting, kept moving forward relentlessly. I could barely watch half the time. Sabine sat next to me, holding my hand tightly. Every time Kellan struggled with a weight, I flinched, but every time he completed a lift, I cheered even louder. In the 5th and final event, with less than a minute to spare, Kellan successfully loaded and lifted the final massive stone. He won the event by a hair. The crowd absolutely erupted. Kellan won the National Amateur Title. I screamed until my throat was raw. Sabine was jumping up and down beside me. When they formally announced Kellan as the new national champion, I openly cried. I actually cried genuine, unadulterated, happy tears for the first time in years. After the competition, in the makeshift change room, Kellan's face was flush and bruised from the exertion. His hands were raw, but he was utterly joyful. We did it! You did it, I corrected him gently. No, we did it. You honestly believe I could have successfully focused on this rigorous training if I was constantly worried sick about some wicked person threatening you? You completely freed me just as much as I freed you. He was completely right. We genuinely saved each other from different kinds of burdens. 8 months into his new professional contract, we were in a quiet hotel room in Phoenix the night before a major competition. Kellan was supposed to be completely asleep, conserving every ounce of energy, but instead he was sitting restlessly on the edge of the bed, looking deeply nervous. "What is troubling you?" I asked quietly. "Nothing is wrong." He stood up and pulled something small and velvet from his travel bag, a tiny box. My heart momentarily stopped beating. "Ilara, I know I said I wasn't proposing at the produce market, but that was many months ago, and I've been carrying this small box with me to every single competition, waiting for the elusive right moment. And I finally came to a profound realization. There is truly no right moment. There's only us and our life together, and I don't want to wait another day." He slowly opened the box. Inside was a wonderfully simple, classic band, beautiful and perfect in its understated elegance. "Will you do me the honor of marrying me?" I couldn't physically speak a word. I just nodded enthusiastically and held out my hand, tears streaming. He slipped the ring securely on my finger, and we both started crying. These huge, embarrassing, overwhelmingly happy tears. The very next night, he decisively won his competition. He publicly dedicated the victory to his new fiancée. That was 4 months ago. We are meticulously planning the wedding now, something small and intimate, just our closest friends and immediate family. Sabine is going to be my maid of honor. Kellan's brothers are all flying in from Vermont. Wedding planning has been fascinating. Kellan wants to be heavily involved in every detail, which is incredibly sweet, but also quite amusing to witness. This enormous professional lifter sitting with me at a bespoke bakery, systematically tasting different types of cake, seriously contemplating the merits of light Italian meringue versus dense chocolate ganache. "I want lemon," he declared firmly during our recent tasting, "but definitely with the tart cranberry filling, Ilara." I was surprised by the baker and revealed details of the upcoming wedding with Kellan. A small, intimate outdoor ceremony for 40 people, held at Kellan's gym's beautiful outdoor training area.
I received a Facebook message from a private investigator named Tyler, hired by Rhys's new victim, Naya. Tyler was building a case for a restraining order against Rhys. Naya and Sabine both gave statements and agreed to testify in court alongside 5 other women, forming a pattern of behavior case. I observed Kellan in our shared kitchen, a picture of domestic bliss, and affirmed my decision to testify. The PI called 3 weeks later. Rhys has been served a restraining order, and the DA is considering charges for stalking and harassment. Kellan and I celebrated simply, watching a movie. Kellan noted that Rhys lost his power to the collective of women who came forward. The preliminary hearing is set for 2 months later, right after our wedding. I met the prosecutor, Victoria, a 15-year veteran of domestic violence cases, who expressed pride in the numerous victims willing to testify. Wedding planning continues. Kellan's warm and funny mother arrived early. She pulled me into a hug, thanking me for making Kellan truly happy after the loss of his father. I asked Kellan about his dad, learning he was killed by a drunk driver when Kellan was 17. Kellan shared that fighting is a way to process his anger and honor his father's advice, to use his size to stand up for people who can't, a role I have allowed him to fulfill by standing up to Rhys for me. Kellan and I shared a moment of tears and healing. I described a significant moment at the same local grocer's where my ordeal began 5 years prior. I smiled at a stranger without fear, realizing I am now living a normal moment, breathing free and safe air. I prepared to attend Kellan's local fight that night, ready to be a supportive fiancé. I reflected on the physical protection Kellan offers, clarifying it's not because I need it, but because he chooses to stand beside me. Kellan's huge, teasing younger brothers, Jake and Ryan, arrived. I found humor in Kellan's traditional superstitions about seeing my simple white wedding dress, Sabine helped me find it, despite his aggressive profession. My mom flew in from Ohio and immediately bonded with Kellan's mom. My mother noted that I am myself again, the girl who laughed and trusted, affirming that Kellan is good for me. I acknowledged we are always working on it. The rehearsal dinner is planned for the burrito stand at the farmer's market where Kellan and I had our first real conversation. I reflected on taking back my life, happiness, and Kellan, never giving them up again. Victoria, the prosecutor, assured me the case against Rhys is strong and he will likely take a plea deal. I contemplated how meeting Kellan saved me from a life of fear and how he used his strength to protect and enlarge my world, unlike Rhys, who made it smaller. I am marrying the love of my life next week, taking his last name Chen, Ilara Chen. I look forward to a future free from Rhys, who is now fighting his own legal battles. During a session, my therapist, Dr. Anya Sharma, challenged my deepest fear. Not that the happiness is too good to be true, but that I'm afraid I deserve to be this happy. I realized the truth of this, understanding I am relearning how to trust and believe in my own worth. Kellan won his fight by decision. He announced a month off for the honeymoon to rural Vermont, where he will show me where he grew up and visit his dad's grave, signifying a transition to a new chapter. Lying in bed, Kellan told me I saved his life by giving him something to fight for that wasn't just the anger from his father's death. I gave him love. We fell asleep holding hands. The final reflection? I reject the notion that abuse makes one stronger, stating it breaks you. I express gratitude for Kellan's strength and gentleness, and for my own choice to live instead of just survive. Rhys's chapter is closed. I am the heroine who appreciates having a strong person stand beside me, building a new life free from fear and full of love.
And that's how I went from looking over my shoulder every second to walking confidently toward my wedding day. I'm marrying the strong man who used his power to build me up, not tear me down. And I couldn't be happier that our community of survivors finally got justice. If my story of fighting back and finding true love resonated with you, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button to support stories of resilience like this one. If you want to see more content about overcoming adversity, or if you just want to stick around for the next chapter of my life as Madison Chen, make sure you subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Final question for the comments. Knowing what you know now, what one piece of advice would you give my past self? Let me know below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.